Knowing what car to flip is the most important thing to know as a car flipper, and I learned this the hard way. When I first started flipping cars years back, I bought a PT Cruiser for what I believe to be an amazing deal. I took a lot of time getting it ready for sale and posted it up thinking I'd make thousands of dollars in profit. And then you know what happened? Nothing at all. I got crickets. No one was interested. Even though I posted it up for a great deal, it took just about 2 weeks to sell it and make only 200 bucks off of it. So to help you not go through that same exact thing, I'm going to give you my personal list of the top 10 cars I would suggest flipping for profit that will perform well literally in any market. And we're going to start with number 10 now. So for the number 10 spot, I would suggest a Ford Explorer. You can literally buy these cars for like under $1,000. I've bought them for that cheap just because you can get them from a year range all the way back from like 2000 all the way till now, 2020 or whatever. And there's still gonna be a lot of demand for it. And just because it's one of Ford's main sellers, there's going to be a lot of parts available as well if you need to fix things up in the future. The only thing I would just put out a quick heads up for is if it is misfiring, just think a little bit more about it, because sometimes misfiring with these cars can be a little problematic because the spark plugs sometimes can get stuck in the cylinder heads. But besides that, I would recommend this car. For the number 9 spot for the best car to flip for profit, I would give that to a Nissan Altima. And I wouldn't just say any Nissan Altima, it would have to be the ones that does not have a CVT transmission. If you guys have been flipping cars before and you've been in a Nissan car, you know the CVT transmissions are trash, they always break down. But the ones that were before the CVT times, like let's say like in 2006 I believe, and before that, those were generally reliable cars, and the same thing as applies with the Ford Explorer. You can get these for really cheap. I bought some as well for like 700 bucks or so and still made great profit off of it. You can get a lot of parts for these cars as well, but they're also pretty easy to fix as well, just because you can get them in like a 4-cylinder engine and there's a lot of space to work on it as well. The number 8 spot for the best car to flip for profit would be the Jeep Grand Cherokee. And the reason why this is up there is for a lot of the same reasons as the Ford Explorer. First of all, there's a really big market behind the older generation of these cars around like a 2000 and 2004, because there's a big off-road market around them as well. So if you can find one that's like rust free, that's great for these. A lot of part availability as well. You can buy the older ones with really high mileage just because the engines and transmissions were actually pretty reliable. The newer ones, not as much, but still there's going to be a lot of people that's really interested in them as well, especially if they're in areas where it's snowing potentially, or they just have bigger families that where they need a bigger car as well. The number 7 spot for the best car to flip for profit goes to the Acura TL. And the main one I suggest for this one, I mean honestly, there's not too many of the TLs. It's not even like there's a newer Acura TL, but the older ones around like let's say like a 2006 or 2004 or so, that generation, great cars. I would say if it's an automatic transmission that you're getting, make sure that you really thoroughly check every single gear, because the transmissions on these cars were a little iffy. Sometimes they slip and stuff like that. But the great thing about these is, first of all, they're actually really reliable cars, especially with their engines and stuff. Great part availability as well, easy to work on. A lot of people are interested in them. This is one of the few cars on this list that you can get in a manual transmission or an automatic, and the manual transmission will actually generally sell better than an automatic transmission, just because these cars are catered to people like me that are into modding cars and different things like that. So people like us will generally pay a little bit more for these cars as well. And also, if you could potentially get like a Type S version of these cars, they will easily sell because there's not too many of them out there, especially in good condition. Now for the number 6 spot for the best car to flip for profit, it goes to the Ford F-150. And I mean, this car had to make it on the list, right? I mean, this is literally the top selling car in America as we stand for probably like the past, I don't know, like 10 years or more. So of course that kind of follows on when it comes to buying used cars as well. There's just a lot of people that are interested in these cars. I would just say that you're making sure that you're not buying a car that has a lot of rust, especially with this. It's, you know, a lot of people are using it as work trucks and stuff. So, you know, just try to get one that's a pretty clean example. If it's all rusted out, people are just not gonna really want it. And also look out for the same thing as I mentioned with the Ford Explorer. If you get the 8-cylinder older version of these cars, then a lot of times if there is a misfire, it could potentially be where the spark plugs are stuck in the engine itself. So again, just look out for that. And the number 5 spot for the best car to flip for profit goes to an Infiniti G. And this can really be a pretty big year range. And if you know, there's actually a lot of different types of Infiniti Gs between the G25, G35, G37. I had the G37 in the past myself. I've sold that one. It was like the manual version of the car. I sold it for a good amount of money, around like $8,000 or $9,000, and within a week I was able to sell it. There's a lot of interest in these cars. It kind of carries on a lot of the same things that I mentioned from the Acura TL, where you can get this in a manual transmission or an auto. And again, with the manual transmission, they're going to be selling for more money, generally speaking. But the good thing with these ones is that for the automatic transmissions, they're generally a lot more reliable than, let's say, the Acura TLs. But everything that I basically said with that one kind of carries on with this one as well. I would just say, if possible, try not to get one that's been like heavily modified or something like that, just because these are cars that, again, people like me are going to possibly try to mod up and change a decent amount. You want to try to get one that's pretty stock and doesn't have too much done to it. Just because if you're selling it to someone else, not everyone is going to want those same mods that that person put on there. And now for the number 4 spot for the best car to flip for profit, it goes to the Toyota RAV4. And I mean, how could we not have a Toyota on the list in general? And to me, this is a very good spot to be in. It kind of makes the top 5 just because, first of all, I mean, there's always going to be a market for Toyotas in general. But to go along with that, I mean, America as it is right now, people love their SUVs. So that's just this car in general. Since it's an SUV, there's going to be a pretty good amount of demand for that as well. Especially if you're in an area that has snow, people love to have like all-wheel drive cars or four-wheel drive cars in areas like that as well. But of course, you know, great part availability as well. Very easy to work on. You can get them in a 4-cylinder, which makes it even easier to work on because there's just more space to play around with. But you really can't go wrong with the RAV4 in general. Number 3 spot goes to the Honda CR-V. And that really comes back to a lot of the same reasons as a Toyota RAV4. It's basically the same type of car. I would just say the Honda CR-V, in most cases, in most markets, you can generally get them a little bit cheaper. So, you know, if you don't have a lot of money just getting into everything, it can help you a little bit with that, where you can potentially afford to buy this car and still make great profit off it as well. Number 2 spot, I'm going to do the first thing where I put 2 different cars in the same bracket. So we're just going to say the Toyota Camry and a Toyota Corolla. Again, I mean, this is a Toyota car. All the same things, honestly, that I said about the RAV4, it applies here, but you could just buy it for even cheaper. And of course, you can buy this for a lot of different price ranges. It basically just depends on what year range you get them from. But, you know, Toyota Camrys have been selling forever at this point. And before I get to the number 1 spot car, I did just want to mention also, if you are someone that's looking to flip cars yourself and you need some advice to be able to make like high profit cars, and you're not someone that knows a lot about fixing cars or just doesn't want to, I did actually put together a checklist covering just the main steps that I would follow to be able to get a car that you can get really high profit off of, but not have to be fixing anything and potentially just being a detailing job, and that's it. If you want access to that checklist, just go to the link in the description below. And now for the number 1 spot, I'm pretty sure you probably would have guessed that by now just from how things are kind of trending from the last couple of cars, but it has to be the Honda Civic / Honda Accord. I mean, it's the same type of things realistically as what I just covered with the Toyota Camry. You know, great part availability. You can buy them from any year range. Even if you have a really small amount of money, you can buy these cars. Let's say like a Honda Civic, that would basically be the cheapest option of a car that you can get. But the reason why I would put this in the number 1 spot over a Toyota Camry is just because you can get these generally a little bit cheaper than something like a Toyota. Usually Toyotas, they hold their values a little bit more than a Honda will. They're both great, reliable cars, and you really can't go wrong with either. But, you know, if you're someone that's just getting into the industry that doesn't have a lot of money to spend, you could potentially get this car for like $1,000 or less, potentially. And if you did want to see how you can go from a beginner flipping cars to being able to build a 10K per month business, you can click into the video there. Make sure you get your checklist to help you flip cars with high profit, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.